Welcome to the Gut Mind Collective podcast, a show that helps busy women develop sustainable, nourishing health habits so you feel calmer and more energetic. I'm your host, Maren Padgett, sharing guided meditations, gut mind health hacks, and interviews to inspire you to put yourself first and lead a purposely healthy life. Today, I am so elated to be joined by Mish Green of Marquette Digital and A Mindful Middle. We've known each other for about 10 years and have a lot of parallels and serendipities in our journey. And it's great to have connected online as we mostly do these days. So welcome, Michelle.
Thank you, Maren. I'm delighted.
Michelle was inspired in her mid-40s by a Maya Angelou quote because it soon became a mantra that really resonated with her life as she raised a teenage son and supported her father through his battle with cancer. Michelle was feeling really stuck and lost. Stress and anxiety were ruling her life and affecting her health, and she was in survival mode, but deep down knew that she wanted to thrive. And so she began this really simple yet profoundly life-changing practice of a journey of gratitude, walking, and then living in a mindful moments through her middle years. And she's going to share this in depth in today's episode. It's so good to have you here.
Thank you, Maren. I'm delighted.
So before we dive deep, specifically talking about your walk on the Camino, which is so inspiring, I'd just love if we could do a few little getting to know you questions, which I do with all of my guests. So would you rather travel the world for a year on a shoestring budget, or would you rather stay in one country for the whole year and live in luxury?
Well, I'm going to say definitely travel the world on a shoestring budget for a year, without a doubt.
Because
I love travel, and I love being a free spirit. And so I love the idea of moving around and, walking, definitely, wandering, catching trains. I love catching trains and planes and boats. And so, no, it would just be, and, I have a real appreciation for the simplicity of life. And I have had the pleasure of, not for a year, but I have traveled the world on a shoestring budget. So I know I can do it.
Awesome. At least you've had that experience, so you can kind of say, yes, I'd probably go luxury. Bit of a diva. But then you're stuck in one place. So, I mean, and I guess you're not getting the experiences of rich worldly experiences. So maybe I'll take a leaf out of your book.
But I guess, you stay in one place, you could actually deep dive into that place too. So that's what you miss out when you travel through. So
immersion versus lots of experiences. I like that.
Yeah.
Awesome. So who would be the most interesting person that you've met and talked with throughout your life?
Look, that question I found quite challenging, and because I actually do love talking to people and meeting different people. I love having conversations and listening to people and finding about them. But I thought, as we were talking about, walking the Camino, I was very lucky to meet John really about 2 years ago, who actually writes the guidebooks for a lot of the Caminos. Yeah. And I volunteered on the night that he spoke, and I got to have a chat with him, when the crowds weren't around. And, it was just really inspiring to hear him talk, like he walks the talk. Mm-hmm. That he talks about in his books, and when you read about him and things like that. So it was definitely, he's definitely a really interesting person about his perspective on the Camino and what it means.
Yeah. Oh, fantastic. I'll have to look him up.
Yes, definitely.
So, so I ask this following question of all people on the podcast. What's your number one self-care ritual?
So it's definitely my morning routine. My regular practice includes meditation and gratitude, some journaling, and I also have affirmations. And I'm currently reading Kate James's book, Be Mindful and Simplify Your Life.
Mhm.
So I tend to just read she has these little bite-sized chapters. And so I just read a bite-sized chapter every day, and it's a really good reflection piece. So yeah, so that's it's a few practices, but it's actually that's the ritual I go through in the
Mm.
mornings.
Mm. And I can only imagine that it would be grounding for you because I know how it is for me. So
Yeah,
it sets the
definitely.
day
And
up, I think.
yeah, it's a good way to start your day. And I'm very fortunate in that I have created my spare room. It used to be a man cave, but it's now actually a meditation space.
Mhm.
And so, I have everything set up there, and I can just go into that room, and, everything's there, and I can just be at peace. And it's just, like you said, it sets the day for you, it does set, the way of your day. And I'm not perfect by any means, and those mornings I do miss it are probably the mornings I need it.
Yeah.
And it's just getting back there and doing it. So yeah.
Mm. And I'm sure you notice it if you miss it too.
Yes, oh definitely, yeah.
Yeah, it's a great thing about rituals. They definitely anchor, and then the absence, it makes its presence known.
Yes. And and it's funny, like you'll reflect back and you'll go, why? And quite often it's because you think you're busy and you haven't got time. And then you
Mm,
actually reflect back and you go, well, no, that's actually rubbish,
mm,
because you just didn't make time. And
mm,
so yeah, it's worth remembering.
absolutely. I hear you, sister. So I'd love if you could tell our listeners a little bit about you and your journey. Yeah, like in business and in life up to kind of present day.
Yeah, sure. So, yeah, I mean, people call me Mish for short. It's been just a more recent thing, really. But look, I'm mum to Ollie, who was a teenager, but he's now a young gentleman, 20 years old. He's still at home and following his dream career in sport and soccer. And I'm really lucky that we have a beautiful relationship. I've got two gorgeous doggies, Booster and Sam. So you quite often see them when I'm doing Zoom calls and things. But yeah, I'm Sydney born and bred. So I lived in Sydney until I was 24. And I moved to London for 2 years on a working holiday in 1993. And I actually stayed 10 years, three backpacking trips, including around Europe, two around Europe. And then there was my third trip. I travelled overland from Warsaw to Kiev, onto Moscow, Siberia, Mongolia, Beijing, and onto Hong Kong. So I've definitely got the travel bug. I met my former partner over there. We got married, and Ollie was born there. And we decided to move back to Melbourne in 2003. So I have three brothers, and I have, I think last count, 12 nieces and nephews and one great niece. My brothers, two are in New South Wales and one in Northern Territory. So, I do love to go and travel and do a road trip and visit them. Um, I'd had a portfolio career, I think you would call it. I started out as a chef, which is what we have in common,
Mhm.
an executive assistant, functions and events. And then, yeah, I left full time employment nearly 3 years ago now in 2018. And relaunched my business, Market to Market Events, and spent a couple of years working in events. Before March last year, when our world turned upside down. So overnight I lost the bulk of my work, and so after about 4 weeks I decided to put my skills and knowledge to great use, and I built 2 directory websites to promote local food and drink businesses in my area, so Eat Drink Casey and Eat Drink Cardinia, so to help promote them during lockdown. And then from that I ended up working with the Good Food Emporium, which is a whole food grocery store and cafe, and I built their online store and project managed their website. So that was, so I sort of got to September, and after doing a coaching program which we did together, and I decided, okay, the universe was trying to tell me something after building 4 websites in 4 months. So I flipped my business from Market Events to Market Digital, and I build, so that's what I do now. I build WordPress websites, but 6 months later, best decision I ever made. My business has grown, and I'm in the position now of being able to, really close to being able to scale my business, which is quite exciting. So and I guess about that sort of personally, I would say as well, a very big part of my last 7 years has been separating from my partner, and with my dad being diagnosed with cancer, and I was his primary carer, losing him. And nearly 2 years ago now, I lost my mum, who was estranged from our family, and so that's this is all part of my personal journey. So that's me in a nutshell.
And you have a richness of experience and in life and career as well. And I know that you're deeply curious about the Camino. And I would love if you could share what inspired you to go on that walk.
So it all started about 7 years ago. I had just separated from my partner, and we moved. We sold the family house, and I moved into a townhouse nearby, and I was really, my head felt overloaded. I felt very stressed. My anxiety was very high, and I thought, right, I need to do something here to make myself, feel better. So I had done mindfulness a couple of years before, and it had worked, but I hadn't really sort of embraced it in my life. So I actually just started walking every morning, and that morning practice just became a real need. I had to get out and do that every morning. And a friend of mine, she knew I was walking a lot, and she said, "Oh, you should watch this movie. It'd be really great. It's called The Way, and it's about walking the Camino in Spain." And so that was sparked, and I had heard of the Camino, but I hadn't really, it just hadn't attached itself to me, hadn't clicked. And so after this conversation, I explored, I watched the movie, and I thought, this is actually, I just felt this calling. I felt this real need and connection that this is what I needed to do. And I wasn't sure when I was going to be able to do it, but I just knew I was going to do it at some stage. So, that's where it started. But it was a good probably 4 years before I actually pursued it and actually did it. So, yeah.
Like, did you? I can only imagine from what I've heard from you and my aunt who walked it, it's quite a journey, isn't it? What, 300 and something
Yes.
kilometers or?
Well, it depends on which Camino you do. There is the most famous one is the French Camino, where you walk from the Pyrenees, and I think that one is close to I think it's 800-900 kilometers, and
Okay.
it's 5 or 6 weeks. So it's
Hmm.
a big chunk of time. But what a lot of people don't realize is there's many different Camino walks in that all lead to Santiago. So you can choose different ways of walking your Camino.
Hmm.
So I love water. I love the coast, and I do love the forests and things like that. So
Mm.
I when I sort of had the opportunity, I could see the gap was coming up, that I could actually take leave. And by this stage my dad had passed away, and I was
Hmm.
grieving for him, and I had that capacity that I could take an extended holiday. So I
Mm.
decided I'd walk the Camino in Portugal, which is
Hmm.
the coastal. I decided to do the coastal Portugal, um, and that was walking from Porto to Santiago. So
Yep.
that one was about I think it's maybe 250 kilometers, might be a
Yep.
little bit less, but it was 10 days of walking from
Yep.
Porto to Santiago. Mm.
Did you need to prepare
So yeah.
yourself? Like, did you need to prepare yourself mentally? I mean, you've traveled a bit. I didn't know that you'd done so much, like from Warsaw across. Like, I didn't, maybe we'd spoken about it, but I may not have, anchored. But that seems like a good solid foundation for doing this. Did you need to prepare yourself physically and mentally, or, like talk me through how you
Yeah.
from here to there?
Yeah. Um, Really, yes. I mean, lots of people do train for it, like particularly if they're doing that bigger walk. I was walking, probably, on average, 12 to 15,000 steps a day. That was my standard. And then on the weekends, I'd walk a bit longer for a couple of hours. So I was over a period of 2 to 3 years, that's what I was walking. So I felt really comfortable, and then I would do sort of the longer hikes, in my local area. I live in southeast Melbourne,
Yeah.
so one of my favorite is the George Bass Coastal Walk, which is you walk from San Remo down to Inverloch, and
Hmm.
I'm at the foot of the Dandenongs. So I do some hikes and things like that. So
Yeah.
in all honesty, I wasn't one of these people that was, went to the gym, and, I did carry my backpack a couple of times, but
Hmm.
it was really just the walking. That's how I prepared myself.
Yeah.
But ironically, I ended up, um, uh, before walking, about 2 weeks before I was departing, I was in a high, my anxiety levels were through the roof. I
Hmm.
was very stressed. I was burnt out, having worked in a position for a year that had really led me to a burnout. Well, I had led
Yeah.
myself to that burnout.
Mm.
So, in actual fact, the week before I was flying out, I actually didn't think I was going to be able to do it, because I really felt that my health had taken a turn.
Yeah.
And yeah, so look, I wouldn't, it was I think my preparation was a bit all over the place.
Yeah.
But
And did you
I
feel
got on I
prepared
got on the
mentally?
plane. Did I feel prepared mentally? Um, I had been, and then I lost my. I lost my way about it a little bit. I was really I'd flown so many times around the world. I love
Mhm.
flying, and I was really getting stressed out about getting on a plane and being in a confined space and going
Mhm.
through busy airports. And but once I just got over that fear and got on the plane and got over there,
Mhm.
it's I started to relax into it a bit. And it was probably just I spent a day or two in I spent 2 days actually in Porto, and it was the night before I stayed in a youth hostel, and there were a couple of other people there my age and older that
Mhm.
were doing different caminos, and I got talking to them, and I sort of had this I had this sort of wave of, oh my gosh, what am I doing? Am I going to be able to do this?
Yeah.
But I woke up the next day and I put the backpack on, put my hiking boots on, and off I went. And it was, I think there is a saying, it's just one step at a time, just one step forward.
Mm.
And that's all you had to focus on. So, yeah.
It's a good metaphor for life, I think, as well. Yeah. And you did it on your own, didn't you? It wasn't a guided tour, or like it wasn't a guided process.
No, something I don't appreciate is that I do love traveling, and I've always organized my own holidays. And because I have, backpacked previously, I have that
Mhm.
experience of like, okay, I know how to plan a trip, know how to book my flights. So I did all of that.
Yeah.
So I probably spent about 3 months, like working out where I was going to walk and what distances I would walk. And I did pre-book some of my accommodation. Actually, I
Yeah.
think I did book all of my accommodation. So yeah, but yeah, I set off and I was walking on my own. So yeah.
It's a big wow for me because, like, we're quite, I'm not as traveled as you. And so, yeah, it's for me, that would be a huge amount of surrender and like trust and faith just to set off. But I guess because it is a path well frequented, there is people around and that kind of thing. Was there any struggles that you encountered on the journey?
Ah, yeah, it's a really it's a journey of highs and lows, and it's different. It's different for everybody. I
Mhm.
mean, the first few days it was I left in June, so it was winter here, and it was the same temperature as Melbourne when I arrived there, and it was very wet. It rained for about 3 or 4 days. So just getting used to your hiking boots and how heavy your bag is, your backpack, and
Mhm.
adjusting things, the cobbles, walking through some of the villages on the cobbles, it could be slippery.
Mhm.
The boardwalks could be slippery. So it really challenges you in the beginning, that you actually have to be really mindful and in the moment and aware of things. And you're also following arrows, and the arrows are the symbols that you follow on the Camino, but they come in
Mhm.
all different shapes and sizes and different places. So it's that's probably your initial challenge, is you've got to get into that sort of feeling and used to it. Along the way, you there's some points, probably those, the last hour or two before you get in to your destination at the end of the day. You
Mhm.
start to feel tired, and you sort of like, there'll be little taxi signs along the way, like, oh, call this taxi and we'll give you a lift. But
Mm.
it's like it's learning to move through there. But actually, the most challenging bit I hadn't actually planned to do. I had walked to Santiago. I had done my 10 days and I loved it, met people along the way. and I decided to walk what's called from Santiago to Finisterre, which in Galicia is the region, and it's Finisterre is the end of the world, and this goes back to the medieval times.
Yeah.
The Galicians said, "Yep, okay, this is the end of the world." So I actually, I think it was on my second day of walking. It was actually going to be the most kilometers I was going to walk. The temperature had slowly risen over this period of 2 weeks, and it was heading close to 40. I was going to be going on the altitude. The altitude was going to be the highest that I'd walked so far. So this day I was very anxious. I left very early, and I got lost twice. Not just once, but I got lost twice. And both the second time I was in tears, and I just in the middle of nowhere, and I thought, how am I going to do this? And it was just the despair and the sadness of being alone and not knowing what to do, and being very conscious of that. I had to, I'd added probably 8 kilometers on to what was already going to be a long walk. And my last bit of walk was actually climbing up to the highest altitude and then coming back down again. And so I was just beside myself. But it's amazing how you find the strength to carry on and to keep on walking. And I got to the bottom of this mountain, and there was an Italian couple that were walking ahead of me. And anyway, I walked up to them and said, "Look, I'm not feeling great. I'm really worried. I've been lost twice. Would you mind if I followed you across this mountain?" Because I lost all faith in myself in being able to walk this path.
I can imagine.
And they said, yeah, it was just you're on your own. So they said, "Yeah, that's fine." And so I followed them, and it was really lovely, because every time I got to like a bend and I'd come around the bend, they were just sitting there and they were waiting for me to come around. They were much faster walkers than me, but that's the sort of companionship and friendship that you find. So I did get over this mountain, and I did get to the hostel that night, and I did, looking back, that was a real turning point for me, and I quite often now reflect back on that day, and it's a metaphor for life. For me, it's my greatest learning from the Camino was that day.
So what do you think, how has this changed your thinking towards life now, or, going through that experience?
I came back, a lot. It's a spiritual journey, walking the Camino. I mean, some people, it is just a travel experience. For me, it was very much a healing and spiritual and connecting to nature. And, sometimes I'd be walking along and I'd be thinking, I'm going to be suddenly feeling like my life had changed, and, everything was going to be wonderful. And it wasn't actually, it wasn't actually about getting to Santiago. It was actually the travel. It was actually walking the journey. That was the most important thing. So coming back from the Camino, it was like it's the adjustment from when you finish the Camino and to when you come back to real life is you have withdrawal symptoms, and you just because life is so, you get up in the morning, you have some breakfast, you get dressed, you put your backpack on, you walk. You might have a coffee, or you go to the supermarket and pick up some food or whatever, and you walk and you just enjoy. You have lunch, you walk, you get to your accommodation in the afternoon, and you might do some washing, you relax, you have dinner, you talk to people, and you go to bed, when you get up in the morning. And it's this real simplicity and lightness of life. And for me, that was like, oh my gosh, this is bliss. So the reflection for me was, how do I bring this simplicity of life? How do I bring this Camino experience back into my life when I get back to Australia? And so for me, my greatest learning is that the Camino, I didn't finish the Camino. That was the start of my Camino journey. And my Camino continues now, that our lives are a Camino. And so, yeah, I look forward to returning and going on another Camino, but I actually do consider my whole life now is a journey, and that's how I reflect on it.
I love that. I'm in awe of that metaphor because, yeah, it's like when you become a black belt in martial arts, right? You achieve that milestone, but the journey only begins. And it's a similar thing, that bringing that present moment awareness and simplicity back to everyday life through your rituals is how you maintain that journey.
Yeah, that's right. And so, you know, I can't wait to go back and do another Camino. I'm really excited to actually be able to do it. And where we are at now, not knowing where, when we are going to be able to do that travel again, it's okay, because I can still bring that Camino way of life into my life now. And so I have come back, and I've really tried to embrace that life of simplicity, in really like just even simple things like decluttering my house, learning to let go of things, and being more mindful, and really just being curious about how the meditation, the mindfulness, and the walking, how you can incorporate that into your life here and just continue continue doing it.
And it sounded as though, from when you were lost on the Camino, and that process of surrender and trust, and even asking for help, like you asked the Italian couple for help. I don't, even if there's language barrier or whatever, you just reached out and took that first step. And, a wise person does ask for help, I think. So to bring those facets to your life.
Yeah, I'll just, sorry, interrupt to say, is that I actually don't like to ask for help. I'm very independent. So that was a huge turnaround for me to actually ask for help, and I think it was to be open. Like, the most important thing about walking the Camino, and I'll share this quote with you. It says, "Don't come to the Camino looking for answers. Instead, come with an open heart, and you may be surprised by what you find." And that's by the author Jane Blanchard. But I just think that actually sums it up, is that you need to come to it with an openness, and the people you meet, like I met the most amazing people on, and I walked with them. I met a lady at about the same age as me, in her 50s, from Finland, and I walked with a psychologist from Western Australia, and you'd see the same people like every day, as you left. You might not stay in the same accommodation. I met a beautiful Indonesian family, and there was the son. He was 7 years old, and there was mum and dad, and then there was grandma walking as well. And there was people of all different fitness levels and abilities and nationalities, and so you really, just learning to be open and acceptance, and just being grateful for all these experiences and the people you met and the conversations you have, is it was just the most amazing experience on reflection. So yeah.
Oh, thank you for sharing, because I could listen to your stories for hours, really. It's when you touched on the fact that you're expecting, this is to paraphrase in my own way, that almost like that godlike moment of the rays of light shining down and like the heavens opening up and the angels going, this is the spiritual moment, that the whole process was a spiritual moment. And then departing from the Camino and coming back into life and integrating the simplicity and the learnings, that was a spiritual moment as well. And how you carry that in your heart, for an eternity almost. And I guess, the
Yeah.
deep healing and being able to move through grief in, because you had lost your father and had cared for him. So it was almost like a somatic experience to support that grieving process and that shedding and letting go and honoring of that relationship, and then finding that relationship with yourself to then move forward into your middle years.
Yeah, and that's what I feel now is, when I reflect back on 7 years ago, I felt really disconnected. I felt really lost. And as well as walking the Camino, I've done, it's just been that whole journey of self-discovery and meditation and mindfulness that have been really important to me. But I now have found, I have found my purpose. I have discovered what my true values are, and I am living the life that I want to live. And I can truly say now that I'm not surviving. I'm not in that surviving mode
Yeah.
anymore. I feel like I have finally stepped into that feeling of thriving. And it doesn't mean that you don't have those difficult or challenging moments or the sad moments. They're still there, but it's just I have a much different approach and openness and acceptance of it's just part of life now.
Yeah. And your
So
responses to
yeah.
those situations. So as we draw this beautiful conversation to a close, I don't want it to end, but we can maybe do part 2 in the future, maybe. Do you have any
Yeah.
final piece of advice that our listeners could draw on when it comes to embracing the unknown, like what you did on the Camino?
Look, I think the fear can be paralyzing, and yeah, just by taking that moment, and really centering and grounding yourself, and taking a deep breath, and just taking that step, putting that foot forward. It's just one step, and then you might be able to do the second step. And it's just you take each step one at a time, and that's all it is. And the fear will go. It does go. It's amazing that it does go. It's just about being in that present moment, disconnecting from the past, disconnecting from the future, and just centering and grounding yourself. And just and just we live in a beautiful world, and we're very lucky here in Australia, and I think we have a lot to be grateful for. So, that gratitude and that being aware of just that moment in time. Yeah.
That's beautiful. I love that notion of one foot in front of the other and one step at a time, because it's life, isn't it, really?
That's right. That's what we do.
Because even if you're
Sometimes
2 minutes ahead, you're just too far ahead. You're not in that present moment awareness.
that's right. So, yeah. And look, I still have those moments of fear, but I'm much better with it now than what I was, and
Mm.
and I'm and every time I take that step and move past that, that paralyzing fear, I'm becoming more accustomed and feeling more comfortable with doing it. So, yeah.
Mm. Oh, beautiful. Absolutely beautiful. Um,
Thank you.
I really appreciated our discussion. And like I said, I love your Camino stories. And, when you shared your journey, I like walking too, and I like nature. And I'm thinking I'd like to maybe do that because my auntie did it and she's like a second mum. So, when I heard her stories, I'm like, ooh, this is all very interesting. But I'm not one of those people who do it on their own at this point in time.
That's right. Well, hopefully you'll be able to join me. So that is, what I truly would love to do is to be able to take women on walking to walk the Camino
Yeah.
in, in Spain, and so that's I'm building my business to help support me do that,
Mhm.
and so I just I want to share that experience of how what the Camino, walking the Camino, could bring to you, and I'm truly aware now that what I thought I did was easy, but I realize now that there are many people that wouldn't go and do what I did, but
Mm.
I'd love to take them and and nurture them and just look after them and share that experience with them of walking the Camino. So I can't wait until we walk
Mm.
the Camino together.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, be awesome. Um, I don't know if I asked you, but I ask all guests to share like a quote or an affirmation that they use in a moment of challenge. And would you say it's the one step at a time, or would you have something else that you use in daily life?
I've actually got I've got an affirmation just above my computer here actually.
Hmm.
So when you consider things like the stars, our affairs don't seem to matter, do they? And it's, for me, that is just, I have it actually just sitting here above my desk
Hmm.
constantly to remember, that, yeah, the beauty, to go outside at night and look up at the sky and the stars.
Hmm.
It's the most amazing thing. And does it really matter all those trivial things that we stress and worry about? No, not really. So that is definitely I would that's my saying I'd share with your
Beautiful.
community.
I love it. Yeah, Milky Way's got a really good way of bringing you back to the present, doesn't it?
Oh, yeah, it does. And we don't. How often do we go outside and look up at night? Not very often, I don't think. Not enough.
Yeah,
So
and
yeah.
particularly if you're in the city too. I remember when I moved from the country to the city, I didn't understand why the sky was pink, or like, because I was in inner city, and it was the smog and it was everything. But now that I'm back in the country, it's clear at times, and unless the clouds are covering it. But yeah, just appreciating that moment of connection, I think, to that grander state of energy. That's
Yeah,
what I take
yeah,
from that quote.
definitely. Yes, yeah, definitely.
Awesome. So where can our lovely listeners find out more about you?
So, well, obviously you can find me over on Market Digital. I'm on Facebook, Instagram. You can look me up on LinkedIn as well. But if you really truly want to, connect with me, um, because of the walking and the Camino, I do have a mindful middle, which you'll find me on Facebook and Instagram there, and that's where uh,
Yeah,
that's where I share my journey of mindfulness, meditation, and walking in the middle years. So yeah,
beautiful. Beautiful. I'll pop them in the show notes too, so we can do that. Awesome. Thank you so
Fabulous.
much, Mish. Absolute pleasure to have you here.
Thank you, Marin. I've loved that we've had this shared journey, and thank you very much for inviting me and letting me talk about the Camino, which I can talk about for hours. So thank you.
You're welcome. We trust that you've enjoyed this episode of the Gut Mind Collective podcast. Be sure to come over to our digital home, thegutmindcollective.com, where you can learn more about what we do and visit our community, Nourish and Connect. And be sure to subscribe using your favourite pod player. We're on all channels and you'll find us where you hang out the most. Goodbye for now.